The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely those of the individual speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Cosplay Alliance, our partners and affiliates. This episode of the Cosplay Alliance podcast may contain coarse language or sensitive subject matters. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the Cosplay Alliance podcast. I am Chris Carthern, joined with a special guest, Lenore Zann. Let's talk about some of your accomplishments. Okay. Award-winning actor, politician, multiple-time electee, author of the new book, A Rogue's Tale, which we're going to talk about. And everyone knows you from the X-Men animated series as Rogue, whose character is known for not being able to touch people, but somehow you've still touched the hearts of everyone in your portrayal.
Right on. Right on.
So happy. Thank you for
I
taking the
love that
time to
character.
talk with us. Oh,
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's so nice to be here on Cosplay Alliance. Did you hear that I cosplayed Rogue recently for the very first time?
yes. Was this at the Uncanny X-Men experience?
No, no, it was at the Emmys, the primetime
Oh,
Emmys.
did you? Oh, you were the Hellfire Gala look.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
That's so amazing.
It was so much fun. It was so much fun. I'd been plotting it for months, and I asked Luciano Vecchio if I could get someone to create his look for me, and I did. I got Rachel Sanderson, her name is, and she's a wonderful seamstress and a costume designer who I had worked with on a movie called The Legend of the White Dragon, which is
Okay.
Jason David Frank's last
Yeah.
movie that he did before he passed away. So
And
I have a small role in that,
oh
and she was the
wow.
costume designer for that movie. So I asked her if she would create this outfit for me for the Emmys, and then I wore it. It was so much fun. And the wig,
That's
I got
so
Chrissy Lynn to do my wig. It was fantastic. And
and
my
did
makeup.
people recognize it?
Yeah. Oh my God, yes. I walked in and people were like, "Hey, Rogue." I mean, I was surprised how many people knew, at the primetime Emmys, because it's
That's
not
so
like it's
amazing.
a comic convention or anything like that. Yeah, it was. But I really did it for the fans because I knew that once pictures started surfacing online, our X-Men fans would really they would get it, and that it would make them feel really excited. And a number of the stories that came out about it in media were like, it was like Rogue strutted from the Hellfire Gala right into the primetime Emmys in Hollywood. So,
So
I
amazing.
wanted to bring that pop culture to the mainstream. I thought it's time. Yeah, lots of fun.
That's actually incredible. And congratulations also for the Emmy nomination.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Very exciting. We're also nominated for an Astra Award, which is the Hollywood Creative Alliance. And I'm nominated as well for Best Voice Actor for that. So that will be in December. And I'll be coming to those as well. I'll be coming back to Los Angeles for those as well. I'm looking forward to it.
Is that for a specific episode?
I'm not sure. The
Okay.
Emmys was for episode 5,
Right, which
Remember
oof,
It, which was my big episode. I'm not sure about the Astros, if that's for an episode, or if it's just the whole
okay.
series. I'm not absolutely sure. And I'm nominated for best voice actor for my performance in the series.
In X-Men. Okay. That's so amazing. Congratulations. Very well
Yeah.
deserved.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And you have this new book
So,
called
what would you
A
like to
Rogue's
get into?
Oh yeah, you have this new book called A
Right.
Rogue's Tale. How long
Yeah.
did this take to write?
It took me 2.5 years. I figured it would take about that long. It took about 2.5 years. I could have finished it sooner, except that life gets in the way. While you're busy writing about your life in the past, you're still living your life in the present, and you have no control over what's happening. And so during that time, a lot of stuff, well, the show came out in March and was this huge hit that, took us all by surprise. And then we were on sort of a speeding train for that. And then my dearest father, who I talk about in the book, became ill and passed away a year ago in October. And while I was home, sort of being with him and spending time with him, I couldn't write. I just was
Okay.
focused really on being with him and reading to him and keeping him comfortable and trying to bring joy to his last chapter of his life. But it's sad. It was depressing and sad. So I just couldn't write. But then after he passed away, I went to Australia, to where I'm originally from and where he was from, where we spent time there until I was 8 years old. And I went to see his family, our family. And on the way over there to Australia from LA, I was able to write. Suddenly it was like it was back. And I wrote 4 chapters all the way to Australia and 4 chapters all the way back, because it's a long flight, 16 hours from LA to Sydney. But
That's actually
but the juice was
incredible.
back again.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. And
It's
I've
interesting,
been I've been reading the book, and I must say it is really good. What I've read so far. And speaking of your
Thank
dad,
you.
like there was a couple key things I think that there I think early on your dad told you basically women that you said your mom was smarter than him, one, and that you
Yeah,
being a woman, there's nothing you can't do.
exactly. Dad was a true feminist. He always taught that women are just are equal to men, and in fact, in many cases, are smarter than men. And he said we should always respect women and give them their due, and that never to let anything stop me just because I'm a woman. Which came in handy years later when I decided to go into politics.
Which I
You
want to
probably haven't
talk
got to
about.
that part in the book yet.
I want to talk about that because that's it seems like you've lived many lives. And one, being a
Yes.
politician is something I don't think a lot of people really know about you. And something incredible that you did. And you put out a bill dealing with environmental racism,
Hmm.
which is
Yeah.
crazy, which is it's kind of sad that it's not kind of a universal thing right now. That's I mean, you were
Yeah.
ahead of so many different legislators pushing a bill like that out, and it actually got signed.
Hmm. Yes. And it became law this past summer. And I flew to Ottawa to meet with the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and the Environment Minister, and the MP that had put it forward for me a second time, and the senators who helped to make it pass. And we celebrated. It was great. And just for your viewers who may not know what environmental racism is, it's the disproportionate number of toxic waste sites, dumps, landfills, and corporate polluters that are placed on or beside racialized communities. And usually that would mean Black or Indigenous communities. And that means that those communities have worse health outcomes than the white communities. I mean, and I'm sure here in the United States, you can think of a number of places where that
Yes,
has happened,
yes. Whether it's
right?
air quality,
Even Flint,
all
Michigan, for
sorts of
instance.
things, water, air quality, so many different things that
Yes,
yeah,
all of that,
definitely affect
all
us.
of that, right?
I just
So it was a
literally
bill to address that.
um I think the true thing is you play a superhero, but you are really a superhero. Like that is something that
Thank you.
um I don't think most people can really quantify like that impact in which I hope gets replicated, you know.
Thank you. Well, I mean, growing up as a young white blonde woman, obviously I didn't have to deal with the racism that many of my friends have had to deal with. But I do feel that our white entitlement, or the fact that we haven't had to put up with some of the stuff that you guys have had to put up with, it really, it touches me. And as you can tell in my book, I feel like a kinship, and part of that comes because I did live with my grandmother out in the bush. I'd go back and forth between Sydney, the city, and also the bush, Karua in New South Wales. And my first friends were indigenous kids. And so I never saw, I don't know, I don't understand why people are racist. I don't understand why people think some people are less important than them just because of the color of their skin. Makes absolutely no sense to me. So, when a woman of color came to me, a doctor, and told me about environmental racism and said, "What can we do about this?" That was when it clicked. I went, "Oh my God, I know exactly what that is. I've seen it." And so I said, "Well, I'll introduce a bill as a legislator, and it'll take a long time, but we'll have to try and get more and more public awareness and get more awareness of elected officials in order to try and get it passed, in order to start to make the change that should have been done hundreds of years ago."
And I can really tell from reading your book that it just your upbringing is why you are, the way you are, and why you're battling social justice issues. And there was a story about a Mrs. Ping early on when you were very young.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I could say, oh, that's a definitely experience that helped shape what you believe.
Yes, Mrs. Ping, who was an older indigenous lady who lived in Karua, on the reserve, and she was friends with my grandmother. And Mrs. Ping looked after about 8 or 9, 10 little children who had been abandoned by their mothers, and she brought them up. And they were my friends, and we would run back and forth between her house and my grandmother's house, and they would feed us and give us tea and cookies and tell us stories. And you know they'd tell us stories about the bush and the animals and witches and dragons and wizards. And oh my God, we had so much fun. We had so much fun. And when you come from that, and then you come and you see people that are so horrendously angry and toxic when it comes to people who are different from them, I just have to shake my head and go, what is wrong with them? They've been taught the wrong values. They've been taught to hate. And that's what a waste of energy in life. Life is short. You don't want
It
to
is.
waste it being hateful and angry and despising others and thinking that you're better than them. I mean, what a wasted life.
It also takes more energy to hate than it does to just be happy and be
Exactly.
friendly.
I know. And I always like to say kindness is free, you know? Kindness is free. So I try to be as kind as I can and as compassionate as I can, and try and see life from other people's perspectives. And I think that's what also made me a good politician.
And wow, that's really really amazing, because I can actually see and feel the love, and that you do care actually. I wish we had
Yeah,
more of that really amongst our politicians.
I
um
know.
and
Yeah.
there was also a story about your mother,
Mm-hmm.
and she was Catholic,
Yes.
and there was a situation that unfortunately they had to leave the church.
Mm-hmm.
How did that impact you?
Well, I mean, I was brought up as a child from by my parents who were atheists. So they said they didn't believe in God. My mother had left the church at the age of 14, and her mother, my grandmother, who lived out in the bush and who I spent time with, they left the church the same day. The story was that the nuns at my mother's school were very, very cruel, and they were saying very, very hurtful things to my mother, very abusive. My mother was a great dancer and won a bunch of awards and things as a dancer around Newcastle in Australia, where she lived. And the nuns used to make fun of her and put her down. And she had kind of a nervous breakdown when she was 14. And she told my grandmother, her mom, I have to leave that school. I can't go back. I don't want to be there anymore. And her mother agreed, and they agreed to put her into the public school. But they knew that the nuns would put up a fight. And so they made a pact and they said, no matter what they say, we have agreed. I'm not coming back. We are leaving. So they went to the school. They talked to the nuns. The nuns came in a group and separated the mother from the daughter, put them in two different corners, told them that they were going to be excommunicated and they were going to go to hell and all this stuff if they left the school. And they just stuck to their word and they stuck to their pact and they left that day. And then they left the church and they never went back. So that meant that I was brought up an atheist as a child. My grandmother was interesting because she talked to the trees and the animals, and she
Mm.
really was almost like an indigenous person in the fact that she believed that we were all one with the universe and with the earth and with everything, every living thing on the earth, which is a very indigenous perspective. And so I thought it made sense that she was friends with Mrs. Ping, and that eventually, when people asked her what her religion was, she would say, "I'm a pantheist," and pantheist means that everything is God, everything
And
that you see, it's God.
in your book, that was the first time I've ever heard that term before, actually.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it comes from like the god, the god Pan, the one that
Hmm.
used to play the flute, and he was like half goat and half man, and he had like satires all around him and stuff, but he was the god of nature in the old like Wiccan and pagan days. So my grandmother, she sort of came closer to the paganism as she got older.
Ah,
It was really interesting, and she had a green thumb, like she could make anything grow. She talked to the flowers and talked to them and everything. I mean, she was pretty magical. So so I feel blessed that I had her, and I had her in my life till she was 97, which is pretty good. That's a pretty good
that's
innings.
that is, and I
And if
just
any,
have
yeah,
so much respect that not all parents would back their child over, basically religion like that. So
yeah.
that's much respect to your grandmother.
Yeah, yeah. And she also talked about how when in her 20s, they had money and they had a lot of money. Her mother was a very good businesswoman. They owned a couple of hotels and they owned a bunch of properties. But when the Depression hit, the people who lived in the properties couldn't afford the rent. And her mother had a very kind heart and didn't want to turn them out, take kick them out of their homes. And so, like, because nobody had money, and so she ended up losing those properties because the bank,
Um,
foreclosed on them and took them. And my grandmother said she noticed that once her mother didn't have the money that she'd had before, the local priest who used to come for dinner every Sunday night stopped coming. And partly, she said, like her mother used to give him money too. She used to give a lot of money to the church. So she said she just sort of saw the hypocrisy and all of it together. It turned her off. Yeah, and that was it. They never looked back.
it's just honestly amazing, and I want to double back to
Mm,
your time as a elected official
mm-hmm.
and as a woman. What was
Yeah.
in your book? You talk about your experience as a woman and kind of the hate that you received, even threatening letters and things like that. How did you deal with all that?
Yeah. It was hard, it's hard for anyone who has a heart and who's in it because you want to do right by the people. And when you're working from a place of compassion, to be greeted with sort of hatred or jeering or being made fun of, it's difficult. Um, And many female leaders, I've noticed, they we get death threats and things like this, and it's misogyny through and through. The things that they say to us are very similar, and it's very misogynistic. And sadly, I've noticed that a lot of women who are or were leaders, like presidents or premiers or prime ministers of different countries who were female, they actually have left early. They have resigned early. They haven't finished out their entire term because of the death threats and the misogyny towards them and their families. And that's a really sad thing, because we need more people who are kind and giving and loving and compassionate in government. We don't need the selfish, egotistical puffballs who love to hear themselves speak and pontificate over nothing. We want people who actually are going to get down there and do the work and try and make life better for people. That's who we need in government. And so, if anyone is thinking about running, just be prepared. It's not going to be a walk in the park, but we need you. We need people with compassion. So please get out there and help the people win that you know are the right people for the job, and also consider running yourself.
Amazing. Yeah, I just the voting process, especially my mother taught me very early. As soon as I turned 18, she was like, "You need to get
Hmm.
involved in this process. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but here's some information." And she really said, you need to be involved." And what I try to tell people is everyone pays attention to the federal elections, but I said you really need to be involved at the local level. The local level as well. There's
Yes.
so many different things that affect
Yeah.
your day to day, your kids, and everything at the local level
Yeah.
that you should be involved in.
Absolutely. And school boards
School
too.
boards, yes,
Yeah, because we know, like, the right wing, the haters, the anti woke folks, I like to call them. They're all trying to get involved there and try and take rights away for children, and we got to stop that.
absolutely agree. And
Hmm.
there was, speaking of your time as a politician, so you were able to deliver a pretty eventful phone call to your father,
Yeah,
and that must have that just must have felt really good to be able to have that experience, before he passed.
it was. I mean, he had just lost his granddaughter, my niece, to cancer at the age of 17, and we were all grieving. This is just a few years ago, and and then Dad's birthday happened about a week later, and he just didn't want to celebrate. He was turning 89 or 90, and he was down, and he just didn't want to celebrate. But the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, heard that it was his birthday and that he didn't want to celebrate. And he sent me a message saying, "Hey, Lenore, I'd like to have a chat with your dad on the phone and wish him happy birthday." So I arranged it that he would call it when I knew I was going to be at my dad's house. And my dad was lying there on the bed with his little reading glasses on top of the bed with a newspaper. He looked like Bilbo Baggins reading the newspaper. And the phone rang. I said, "Hey, Dad, I think this one might be for you." And he's like, "Oh, well, who would that be?" I said, "Well, you'll probably recognize him when you hear him." And then I put it on speakerphone, and it was the Prime Minister. And they had the best conversation. And the Prime Minister gave him his sincere condolences on the loss of his granddaughter, and said, told him the story of how he had lost his younger brother in a freak avalanche accident, but how he had almost lost his brother before that as well, and how he carried his brother's memory with him. And he said, "I know you'll carry Maya with you wherever you go." And at the very end of the conversation, Dad said, "Well, you probably have lots of important things to do. So thank you so much for the call. And just remember, you're doing an excellent job at running the country. I'm very proud of you, my boy." And he called the Prime Minister my boy. I, you heard this surprise sort of like silence on the other end, like where he was taking his breath, and then it was like, well, thank you, Paul. I really appreciate that. It was so sweet. I will treasure that moment forever.
That's such a great, like, that. When I read that, that made me smile. That really made me smile.
Yeah, I know, right? Right. Yeah.
So also I read something that I didn't know is that you wrote a one woman
Hmm.
play based on Marilyn Monroe,
Yeah,
and
I did.
and performed it as well.
Yeah.
What was the motivation behind that?
Well, I had played Marilyn when I was 19. I was discovered, um, and was chosen to play Marilyn Monroe in a rock opera on the life of Marilyn called Hey Marilyn. It was all sung, no dialogue, kind of like Evita or, Jesus Christ Superstar or
Okay.
any of those kinds of shows or like Hamilton, where, there's no dialogue, it's all sung. So I did that when I was 19, 20. Then I was cast to play Marilyn again two more times in other plays. And so when I was 36, I quit drinking and I kind of hit a bottom with my drinking, and I knew it was time to quit. And I knew that I needed to write something. And so I started writing some essays on Marilyn, who I had studied in depth. And I realized I wanted to perform it as a one woman play. I went to her grave site in Westwood in Los Angeles on the 40th anniversary of her death. And there were all these cards and balloons and little teddy bears and messages from all around the world from people who loved Marilyn. And I thought, wow, she's still alive to these people. So I went, yeah, I'm going to write a play about Marilyn and I'll play Marilyn again. And so I started writing it in Los Angeles and Santa Monica. So I wrote all of her LA years in Santa Monica. And then I went to New York and I got an apartment in New York and I wrote her New York years, like when she married Arthur Miller and started going to the actors school and studying with Lee Strasberg and all that. I wrote that in New York, and then I put it all together and had it produced and did it in New York City, and it was really exciting. I mean, it was a bit of a roller coaster because in the beginning I had gone with a producer who stole all the money, and then I had to start from scratch again.
Oh,
Oh yeah, it was tough, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
and you performed it off Broadway in New York,
Yes, yes,
and you said you wanted
yep,
a New York Times review,
yes, exactly. Got a good
and
review
you
in the New York Times.
good review. And there was one other thing you said you wanted to do, which is crazy because it's a show that I think a lot of people love. But Law and Order, you were on Law and Order.
Yeah, yes, yeah. That was my dream. I wanted to get my show produced off Broadway, get a good review in the New York Times, and get a role on Law and Order. And I got to do all three.
And how did you get the
It's
role?
called
Was it
Veterans
auditioning?
Day. I just auditioned. I
Okay.
just auditioned. I had a friend who had an agent. The agent said she wanted to represent me. They sent me out for the audition for Law and Order, and I booked it. And I got to work with Sam Waterston and Jerry Orbach, who I had been, and I loved him. I idolized him because he'd done musicals. He started off doing stage musicals. A lot of the stage musicals, which I had done as a young person in community theater and in theater, and so I'd listened to his voice on records over and over again, learning songs. And now I was working with him. It was amazing. It's called Veterans Day. If they play it every year on Veterans Day, on or around Veterans Day. So I have a guest star role in
Oh,
that one.
that is coming up,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
It'll probably play at some point, Veterans
Okay.
Day. Yeah,
I'm gonna
check
look
it
out
out.
for it. I'm gonna look out for that
And
one.
yeah, Jesse L. Simpson's in it too.
Okay. Okay. This
And
is
he's
it. Yeah.
great. He's wonderful. Yeah, I
There's
had
so
scenes with
many.
all three of those.
So
Guys.
many good episodes of Law and Order.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Oh, so I
I have
did want
another
to.
show that's coming out that I was going to say too. I've got
Oh,
another TV series I'm about to start recording, or start shooting. It's a new one for Sci-Fi and NBC called Revival, and it's based on the horror comics of the same name called Revival. So this is the live action version.
okay.
And I start shooting that. I've got a small recurring role, and I'll be starting like next week, actually shooting that.
This sounds like it's right up my alley. I love comics and I love horror, so I will be tuned
Right
into
on.
Revival.
Yeah, check it out. Look it up online because it's got a whole bunch of stuff about the comics
Oh,
and then about the new show. Yeah, I
that's
think you'll like
amazing.
it. Yeah, the
I
scripts are
wanted
great.
to.
I
I
love.
wanted to actually mention about you're
Mhm.
running for office. We always talked about the misogyny, but the as an actress, sometimes you play roles that may involve being nude or topless, and someone tried to, I guess, put those pictures out to be of you in order to, I
Yeah,
guess, disqualify you or make you look bad. But what happened in that
yeah.
situation?
Well, when it was first announced that I was going to be running for office back in 2009, um, I got a call from my party, and they said, Lenore, remember when you signed an agreement, like a non-disclosure agreement, or a disclosure agreement, I guess it was actually, where you had to write down if you've done anything that might embarrass you or the party. And I wrote down, well, there's nothing I've done that would embarrass me, but you ought to be aware that that I've done nude scenes, love scenes, with men and women on stage, and in film and TV. And if somebody wanted to try and, drag us down, they might bring that up. And so they said, well, somebody has. I'm like, okay. And they said, so someone has sent it to the CBC 6 o'clock news, and they're going to run with the story. So they ran with the story, and it was about I had done a topless scene in a show called The L Word, which was about lesbians, and it was a very popular show. And I had a shower scene in it, and so they took that out of context and they took a picture of it, and they were like, well, do you really want this woman running for office? Here she is doing nude scenes and stuff. And so my attitude was like, so I'm an actor. Yeah, it's part of the job. It's just one of the things that we do. It's not a big deal. And this was a show I did, however many years ago, and what's it matter? It's part of the job. And it backfired on them, and many people were very upset of the fact that this political party tried to use that against somebody who's well respected, who won awards, and is a well-rounded actor. And my union also got into the fray, and they were upset too because they said, "So does this mean that no actor can now run for office?"
Mhm.
So I tell that to the Terminator or Clint Eastwood, right?
Right, right.
So or Ronald Reagan for that matter. I mean, you know, or now the president of the Ukraine. He's an actor, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, so it backfired, and I won in a landslide, and then the media said I won in a Zan slide,
I love
and then I
that.
won,
I love that.
right? I won in a Zan slide, and then we won. I won three more elections after that, so 12 years, 4 terms in office. Yeah.
That's
And the
incredible.
final and the final one was as a federal member of parliament with Prime Minister Trudeau. It was really, yeah, it was, I in the book I talk about my dad in his last weeks of life when I said to him, "Hey dad, what's some of the stuff that's made you the happiest in your life?" And I figured he would say, "Oh, having new children and all that kind of stuff." And then but he thought for a minute, and then all of a sudden he bolted up outright, and his eyes opened up. He went, "When we went into politics, now that was
Uh,
exciting."
that's
And I was like, I
incredible.
love that. Right? When we went into politics,
That's
I just
incredible.
love it. Yeah, that puts a smile on my face every time I remember.
I can't wait to get to the rest of that book. Let's say it's been very interesting, very enlightening thus far,
Thank you.
and
I
very well
appreciate
written.
that. Thank you. Well, if
But
people like this one, I'm going to write more.
oh, look,
Yeah.
I think a
If
lot of
this one
people are
does
gonna
well, I'll
like
write
this.
more. I hope so.
People, it's on you.
I'm
It's on us.
yeah,
If you want
yes,
more,
it
it's
is.
on
It's on
us.
you.
Okay.
Yeah. And they have to order it. So they can pre order it on Amazon
Okay.
now. It's available for pre order.
Now, I cannot talk to the voice of Rogue and not talk
Mm-hmm.
about X-Men. I was one of those
Right.
kids. Saturday morning, I'm turning on the
Yeah.
TV. I was one of those kids, and it's even then it was one of the my favorite shows. You know, you also had the comics, you had Chris Claremont and all those really great
Mm-hmm.
stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and when you were asked to reprise your role as a Rogue, and you talk about a
Mm-hmm.
little bit in your book, how did it make you feel? Nervous, uh, anxious?
It was. I mean, it gave me a lifeline focus on my political work. And we'd just gone through the pandemic, and we had a terrible mass shooting in my constituency, like the largest mass shooting in Canada's history. It was terrible, and I had been asked on television, is it too soon to talk about more gun control? And I said, it's never too soon to talk about more gun control. We need to save lives. And I said, we don't want to become like the United States, where they're like happening every day, right? And in Canada, that's not happening yet. Um, well, after that interview, I got targeted by the gun industry, their members, to start sending me threatening letters and posts on social media and death threats, and it was horrendous. And then my niece died of cancer, and then an election was called, a snap election. And after 12 years of being a public servant, I lost my seat. So I was devastated. I was grieving my niece. I was grieving the fact that I'd lost my job, didn't know what to do with the rest of my life. And then suddenly the X-Men came calling. Disney called, asking if I would come back again and reprise the role that I love so much of Rogue, who is so full of hope and wants to try and help to make the world a better place. And all of a sudden, it was like it just gave me a whole new lease on life and made me feel like, okay, I really am in the right place at the right time to be able to do this and to do her upright. And so I felt honored and thrilled to be able to come back and play her again for a whole new generation of kids.
A whole new generation, but also for the same generation as the previous at the same time.
Yes, and for the
I
same generation as well. Yeah, you're right. And what's interesting is that the scripts, when I read them, I thought, well, this is great because just like the first time we did it, they don't talk down to children. They they really, so the scripts for this show, X-Men 97, are talking to the fans who were children in the 90s and are now older, but they're also not talking down for the kids that are watching it. So those 90s children who are now adults are introducing their kids to the show, and their kids are loving it too. It's it's amazing.
it's amazing. I mean, from the first episode, I mean, I was super excited that it was coming back, and first
Mm-hmm.
episode, I was like, "This is crazy. This is so good. Like the writing, everything was just perfect timing. It was, and then it fit with what was
Yeah,
happening today, and
I know.
uh, and it was it was exactly what I think we needed, and to call attention to, you know, everything that was going on. And I feel like
Yeah.
it's already one of those things that people see representation that they normally don't find themselves represented, or they I can identify with
Right.
a lot of the different characters. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, like everyone, every voice, everyone that's participated, the team, the creatives, the artists, the like, producers, it just job well done. I just have to say job well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
um
I agree. I was amazed at the incredible job the artists did. The scripts, as we said, are fantastic. The direction, the music, all of it, the pacing, it's just spectacular. So it's a real honor to be part of this show.
I mean, X-Men is I think it's one of the few shows where you have to watch the intro as well. You don't skip that intro. It's one of the best intros to ever
Right.
exist.
Right.
Just
And you never know who's gonna appear in that intro either.
the
You know what I
change.
mean? Because
Oh,
sometimes there's new
look,
characters, right?
I'm not gonna lie to you. After the Remember the Name episode, when Gambit was gone, I almost lost it. I was like, no, I almost
Yeah.
lost it. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
the Remember the Name episode, that was, I have to be honest, like if I don't know if you watch like Infinity War in theaters, but when it went off, it was just complete silence,
Hmm.
like in the whole. If
Right.
I imagine watching the Remember the Name, my name, episode in the theater, it would have been the same thing, just complete silence after what we just
Yeah.
experienced. And
Yeah.
um, honestly,
Yeah.
the emotion that you could really feel the emotion. You could feel it.
Good. Good. Well, as I said, I had been grieving. I'd been grieving my young niece, and she had passed away maybe about 8 months, 9 months, a year before I recorded that episode. So I decided to channel all that grief into my performance so that it would be authentic, so that people could feel it viscerally, so they could feel it in their souls. And I figured the world had been through so much at that point in time. We had all lost somebody we knew, or even just watching the deaths piling up, the number of deaths all around the world, watching the wars that are
Mhm.
occurring, all of that makes people feel traumatized and full of grief, and they might not even know it. So I wanted to sort of touch them with my own grief and get them to feel their own and have a cathartic experience and release it and hopefully cry. And I'm told most people did.
No,
So I think that's good. That's healing.
I definitely was one of the criers. It,
Good.
you know, it was felt. And honestly, and I think there were different points throughout the episode, as I think that made it even more so, especially Rogue's interaction with Gambit before that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
now seeing what happened to him, I was distraught. I was.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And the fact that he thought that she was choosing Magneto, but then she changed her mind. But then it was too late. He never
Yeah,
found out.
yeah.
Yeah. But and I loved the fact that I was able to influence some of the writing in the scene with Magneto when I come down out of the ceiling, and we have that dance
Mhm.
together in the hall, and we kiss. And then you think that Rogue and Magneto thinks she's going to say, "Oh, I love you. I'll always be with you," and she says, "Thanks for the dance, sugar." But Remy was right. Some things are deeper than skin.
Yes.
And for me, I asked them if I could say that. They had something else written, and I wasn't feeling it. So I said, "Can I try something else?" And they said, "Sure." So I did that, and they went, Okay, that's good. And then they kept it. And I'm really glad they did. So I repeated what Remy had said earlier.
Mm,
And for me, knowing my story, knowing my rogue's tale, to say that, to say some things are deeper than skin, that means a lot.
it does. It
Because it's not
does.
just about our
Wow.
out, it's not just about our skin. It's not just about what color our skin is, how we look, how we appear outwardly. It's what's inside. And about true love is all about what's inside. Some things are deeper than skin. Yeah.
That is wow. That yeah, you explaining that makes that
Mhm.
even more emotional to me. Wow.
Mhm. Mhm. Right? Yeah. Because here she is, someone who can't touch. She can never feel his skin. Like she'd already said to Remy, your heart may beat for me, but I can't feel it. You shine your light on everything except for me. I can't, you
Oh,
know. But so for her to say that, like it's pretty powerful.
it is. Wow. No,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was I'm glad that they let you change that, like, because that
Yeah.
definitely was fitting.
Thank you.
And I think everyone is now, waiting what's next. I mean, you
Yeah.
got 100% Rotten Tomato score.
I know. Amazing, huh? Wow.
100%.
I know. It's
And
mind boggling.
the thing that I loved about this though was like you actually really got to see the women. There were some, centric
Mm-hmm.
stories, based on the women in like Rogue. There are a couple of points during the series that I actually like yelled, like just yelled and out of excitement. And
Right.
one was Storm when she shows up,
Yeah.
uh
Right.
and
When she
handles
first
the
shows up.
signal. When she first shows up, I yelled.
Oh,
And
me too. I did too.
oh, another one was when you and Cap were arguing and you threw his shield. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. I know. I love that moment too.
Oh,
I
I
love
was like,
that whole episode.
that whole
Episode 7.
that episode, I think people forget really how strong Rogue is. And
Right.
I think that episode you really like, oh wait, no, Rogue is like the
Yeah.
strongest.
Yeah.
And I
She
was so
is.
glad,
She's the strongest woman in the universe.
so glad we got to see that. And I think a lot of people identify with it as well, because you said we're dealing with loss and trauma.
Exactly.
And the one thing she said to everyone else was like, none of you were there. You didn't
Exactly.
see what I saw, go through what went through
Right.
the same way.
Right.
So I just there's just it was a very powerful series.
Yeah. And even just the universal rage over why do we have to keep going through all of these things where innocent people are being murdered and where and by by the police sometimes,
Mhm.
and why are we having all these mass shootings and school shootings? What do you mean your hands are tied? Right?
Thoughts and
Oh well,
prayers
if
is
your hands are
always the
tied, I
answer.
guess you won't be needing this.
Exactly.
You won't be needing this.
Like Cap basically just said, basically Cap told you thoughts and prayers, which is
Right,
the response
exactly.
every time,
That's
right?
right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And Rogue's like, yeah, you can take your thoughts and prayers and shove them where the sun don't shine.
And I love that moment,
Yeah, me
honestly.
too.
Um
Good.
I have a story. So I actually met you at WonderCon this year. Um
Okay.
I was wearing this as well, which was
Oh,
pretty awesome. It was right after the Amazing X-Men panel. Uh
okay. Right, right.
which was and this was before the series came out, right? Or was the series already out at that point? I think it was
Trying to
before.
remember. So it was
uh
like last year.
it was early this year. It was like March.
Oh, okay. Oh, 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 right.
Um
Okay. I would have
or it was
just come
like,
back
or
from Australia.
it was early. I think it only been a few episodes. I think we were only like one or two episodes in or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And it was just the energy. I don't experience a lot of this type of energy in panels, and you could tell that like everyone there just had so much love for the X-Men and the cast, new and old. Like,
Uh,
um,
yeah.
it was truly amazing, and hopefully, actually, we'll put the picture in because I have a picture with you,
Okay.
and we'll
Fantastic.
drop it in here.
Right on. Right on. Excellent.
Um, but how does it feel right now to experience this type of impact? Like, it's not just a, oh, it's a good show. There's an actual social impact.
Yes. Well, uh, now that you've read my book and you know what makes me tick, you can see that I'm all about the social impact and how we can try and open people's minds and but also comfort people and make people feel like it's okay to be different. And hey, we're all in this together. We all have each other's backs. We are a family and we are an X-Men community and we all love each other. And so it makes me feel really good to belong to this community. And, we didn't have this the first time around. When we did the show back in the 90s, as we've said before, there was no social media, there was no
Mhm.
internet, there were no emails, there were no cell phones, there was nothing. So we didn't have a clue of how our show was impacting people or whether it was at all. And it was only 5 years ago we started, when we started going to some Comic Cons before the show came back, that we started to feel the love. Like we came to one in LA and there were 100,000 fans there and we were on a panel and we were blown away. We couldn't believe it. We were like, they really like us. Our show really meant something to them. We had no idea. And so now to be able to see it in real time and watch the fans' reactions online and meeting them at the Comic Cons, it's just so beautiful. We just feel so blessed and very, very grateful and grateful to be back. And many, many people tell us like stories, very moving stories about how we've helped them. Kids that were bullied or women that were in abusive relationships. And they told me, your character stuck in my head. And I was thinking of, well, what would Rogue do? And Rogue was saying to me, you can get out, you can do this, you've got the strength. I'm like, wow. It's heavy duty, and even little kids, sick kids who are thinking of the X-Men and Rogue and how Rogue would be there with them holding their hand. I've met some of them as well, some kids who have some really serious illnesses. And I just, it's so fulfilling and overwhelming, actually. It's just fills me up with joy.
It's so amazing, and I think your voice is just it's we can pick your voice out of anyone's voice. I feel like because it's so it's so. I'm from the South as well. I'm
Are
from the
you?
South,
Okay.
so
Right.
um, how did you come up with the actual voice?
It's just really my voice, but with a Southern accent. My daddy liked to kill himself when he found out I was a mutant. Uh, I don't know. It comes naturally to me. I love it. It feels comfortable. Feels like I'm just slipping into a warm glove. A well worn, warm glove. And yeah, Rogue's just a part of me.
I think Rogue's a part of everybody now.
That's good. That's
I
good.
think.
I love it. And I love it. People come up, will you please just call me Sugar? And I'm like, well, I call everybody Sugar, Sugar.
Oh my gosh, that is just oh the like the child in me and the adult in me are both satisfied at the same time. I love it.
Oh,
I
that's
love
so
it.
good. That's so
Well,
good. Well, make sure to come and introduce yourself to me the next time I'm at a con that you're at. Um, the next one I'm doing right now, well, Well, tomorrow I'm doing Scum and Villainy. I'm going to be signing my book
Oh, okay.
at Scum and Villainy. If you want to pop by, get your book signed.
That would be amazing. Unfortunately, I'm in Seattle.
Oh, you're in Seattle. Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, so we're doing a book signing at Scum and Villainy in West Hollywood tomorrow night from
nice.
6 till 8. And then I go back to Nova Scotia and I have a book launch there on Friday and Saturday. And then I go to New Brunswick to shoot Revival. And then to Cincinnati. I'll be signing books in Cincinnati at the Comic Con there. Then flying over to Auckland, New Zealand. And then Australia, Brisbane and Adelaide. And I'll be taking books and signing them there as well. So I'm doing 3 cons there. Armageddon Con in New Zealand, and it's called Supernova in Australia.
Supernova.
So that'll be fun.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Amazing.
then Houston, Texas in December. Houston, Texas, Nostalgia Con.
Well, I definitely wish you so much success on your
Thank you.
book. It is
Appreciate
I can't wait to get through the rest of it. And
it.
I really appreciate you for being like a true warrior, for fighting for social justice and inspiring people.
Thank you.
I'm sure you hear it all the time, but it is truly impacting people, including myself.
Good. Good. Well, thank you. And everybody get out and vote and get out and volunteer for your local Democratic Party.
Get out,
Please.
vote, volunteer, and if you don't see someone you like, how about you throw your hat in the ring yourself?
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Chris.
Lenora. Oh,
It's
have
a
a
pleasure.
beautiful mutant-filled day.
You have a blessed day. And yeah, and send me word when you finish reading the book what you thought about it.
I
I'd be
will do.
very
I will.
curious to know.
I'll actually do like a review of it.
Okay, great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, love. Have a good one. Bye, sugar.
Uh,
Mwah.
If you're watching this episode on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out other episodes of the Cosplay Alliance podcast. The Cosplay Alliance podcast is also available in audio format on all major podcast platforms.